Welcome to the Daily AI Show. Today is May 20th. Today we're first of all, I laugh at our title screen there because I was like, that looks like an uncle I have. But anyway, yeah, so welcome to the Daily AI Show. I'm joined by Beth, Juni, Brian, Andy. So today we're going to be talking about going full stack with AI. Welcome to those who have already joined us. And I think this discussion today is going to be pretty significant and really where I believe AI is moving towards. All the foundations are being laid on today. So I actually want to start this with why I picked this topic, and it's actually from Y Combinator. So I want to play a little video from Y Combinator and what they mean by full stack AI. So just share that there. Okay.
Like to fund more founders working on full stack AI companies. What is a full stack AI company, you ask? Let me explain. Suppose you believe that LLMs are now able to automate a lot of legal work. There's two things you might do with that insight. You could build an AI agent and sell it to law firms. That's what most people do. Or you could start your own law firm, staff it with AI agents, and compete with the existing law firms. And that, my friends, is going full stack. You could do this for any industry, especially one dominated by slow-moving incumbents. Instead of selling to the dinosaurs, you could simply beat them. If you're ambitious enough to work on an idea like this, we'd love to work with you.
Okay, so the second piece that I actually wanted to share was on the Y Combinator site itself, and that was the.
Do you want me to pull this one up as well?
Yeah, yes, please. So this was summer 2025, the request for startups, and it's funny because he didn't really say it. He said beat it, but in the notes it goes instead of selling to the dinosaurs, you can make them extinct. So this to me has a couple ramifications for it. Now, first of all, in their spring 2025 call out, they had one thing that I want to look at was what was it here? Vertical AI agents. So they were doing a call out to essentially compete with all vertical SaaS, so vertical agents, right? Then they also had BDA, software where the customers will be agent. It's very interesting to me in that in one quarter, they went from, we want you to create these tools to forget the tools. We'll just create the whole company instead, right? So just go right into the company. Forget selling to tools, just knock it all down. And I think this is a shot, and this is a warning call for all industries that within a couple quarters or within a year, 2 years, you will have an AI first company going head to head with a human first company. I don't know which one will be better, but I think every single industry, especially the ones that they're saying it's a dinosaur, will have something like that. Now, my thinking is our really large language models or any of the AI we have today can take over full stack? I don't think so. Maybe for very niche use cases, but I think this is more where the puck is going, not where it is today. And we're starting to see piece by piece by piece all the foundations being laid, like Visa and MasterCard's AI agent financial capabilities, being able to use your agent being able to pay and make transactions for you. So as those things are being laid out, I think the call out for AI first companies is I think it's timely because as these companies start building, they can start incorporating new technologies and over. And I love this because they're not hiding it anymore either, right? There is just like, no, I want to wipe out that company, that industry, and we want to make them extinct.
Yeah, I think one sentence that came up to me in just this initial part of talking about what you just showed, the full stack, and this is from Perplexity and me doing a lot of research with Perplexity, but this stood out to me. Current full stack AI models excel in procedural, data driven tasks, but face limitations in areas requiring creativity or emotional intelligence. And I don't see that as a limitation. I actually think that to me, that was a really well defined statement that just sort of helps where we might see, to your point, Carl, these first companies come on board. Now, the one that perplexed, I don't know if you guys saw this one, the one that was the shining star was Garfield AI or Garfield Law, they said it would also goes by, which is actually, I believe, a British company. And it absolutely fits the definition and role of what a full stack AI is. In fact, they've worked really hard to get approvals in the government and stuff like that. But essentially, what they're doing is it says the most prominent recent example is Garfield AI, which received official authorization from UK's Solicitors Regulation Authority, which is called SRA, in just this month, May of 2025. Instead of creating legal tech to sell to law firms, Garfield embodies the full stack approach by operating as an actual law firm powered by AI. And what they do is they target debt recovery for small claims up to £10,000, targeting small and medium-sized businesses struggling with unpaid invoices. So just really quick, what this system will do, and then we can talk about, I think, Carl, like, is this full stack, right? Is it will generate, quote, polite chaser letters for as little as £2, transform raw data, so unpaid invoices, contracts, correspondence, into ready documents, extract key facts and assets, debtor solvency. And it assesses debtor solvency, calculates statutory and contractual interest, guides users, that's important, I think, through the entire small claims court process, and recommends the next steps based on the debtor responses. And it does go on without me getting into more of it, but in order to get regulatory approval, the CEO, the founder, has to be the human in the loop. That was a big part for them getting this approval to it. So it is full stack. I do agree with it, but it also has this human in the loop part of it, which needs to satisfy the law requirements, hallucinations, everything being personally reviewed by a human. Really interesting use case, though. I don't know. Did you guys see that one come up as well?
So what I'm wondering,
one. Yeah, go ahead.
What I'm wondering is whether the human in the loop has to be there for the regulatory aspects for this particular industry. Does full stack need a human, or like full stack? Carl, what is full stack? Greg is asking, what are full stack's components?
The thing is, though, Y Combinator, I listened to the actually, they had a podcast recently about, like, they went into about 40 minutes of this. What can you actually build today with the current tech and what they're actually looking at? So I think they're actually looking at the first set of these companies are kind of the test pilots. And the hope is, as companies learn or see other companies do this, and as they're essentially banking on the tech becoming better and better and better and better. So the first crop kind of tests this out. The next crop after that will really take off. So it's sort of like a long-term play. And I think this is important because a lot of companies build for what they think it is happening today. Like, I'm going to build this because I'm going to sell this. So you see a lot of AI companies, that AI products, you can go to, I think, Product Hunt, Future AI Tools, all of them, they're being built for today's use. But are you actually building for 3 months, 6 months, 1 year down the road? So your company may not be relevant or usable today, but in 6 months, because of how fast the tech is coming, you've got the leg up. And so I think that's what's encouraging, right? That's
your point about the progression that's happening. First, developing AI tools and then ultimately arriving at full stack AI companies is already demonstrated by Y Combinator. They've made an investment in a company in the legal space, Legora. It's one of their fastest growing companies. And while that company is currently focused on building AI tools for lawyers, it appears that it's positioned to eventually perform legal work directly, potentially becoming the biggest law firm on the planet through AI-powered services rather than human attorneys. So being full stack means that you go beyond just the core technology that you're applying AI to, and you use AI to operate the rest of the business as well. This is particularly important in professional services firms, right? Where there's a lot of professionals who are, experienced experts in the core technology, if you will, of legal or health or whatever the other sort of central value proposition of the company is. But a full stack company has to develop operational components that go beyond the core technology. So they would have to, build things to satisfy the accounting function, right? Let's see. The idea is to try to get to a company that's almost purely software. So we talked about the idea of service as a software. Well, this is the legal examples we're talking about are professional services as software, where almost every function of the company, with the exception, Beth, as you're pointing out, that there have to be some humans to meet regulatory requirements in that industry, right? Almost everything else is delivered by AI, and individual human positions are replaced by AI agents in almost every function in order to get to this very high level, software level margins that are very interesting to venture capital companies, but with professional services level market size. Like the amount of money that's coming in is huge, and the margin, the profitability of it is huge, because if you replaced all the humans. That's the underlying truth about what we're talking about in full stack AI.
All right.
And I wanna go even further on that. And when I posted this on, I did a TikTok on it and so on. There was a lot of you can't say pushback, but disbelief that this will actually happen, right? Because it's like, oh, there's no way there's no way this is gonna do it. Like, you'll still need this and this. I'm like, but I think the thinking is still, what can it do today? That's not the point. The point is, if you're looking at the trajectory, what can you do in 6 months? And how long does it normally take to build a company? You're not going to have a company tomorrow. You're not going to have a company in a month. Maybe you can, but there's still a lot of pieces that you need to go into, especially when you talk about dinosaur industries. You're also talking about heavily regulated industries. Say for example, the example of legal lawyers. You better believe those law societies and those colleges, or there's a lot of regulation that goes around that. Now, a couple of people made a good point. It's like, well, I think people are thinking this thing's going to be purely AI. And I'm like, no, if you actually were smart about it, you create a law firm, your operations are all AI, all the processes and docs are AI, and maybe the last final step is a human to beat all the regulations. But do you need all those lawyers when you technically can create lawyers plus agents, and then everything is just funneled to that one lawyer? And it's like, I'll give you an example. We trained the City of Calgary Cybercrimes Division last week on using AI. And one of their concerns was, oh, how are we going to, let's say we create this document, if we pass it on to the Crown, so the prosecutors, if they present this to the judge, will the judge throw it out because it's AI created? And it's really just a summary of a couple of reports and stuff. And then a couple of questions were, what if we didn't tell the judge? Or more importantly, well, what's the difference? I reviewed it. Just because we created it, I reviewed it, and then I passed it on. And it saves us 4 to 6, 8 hours of actual manual labor, right? So these are all the tiny little steps that I think from a legal perspective, and I think accounting or whatever heavily regulated like medical, you actually have to think through, how can you use AI and kind of work within the regulations? Because I don't think they're going to have new regulations. They're too slow.
What I find interesting about this is that the legal training, like to be a lawyer, may in this future not be the right training for that last 5%, right? That's slightly more like a paralegal or like an editor or right? And that's going to be, I think, a bumpy road. We're already. It's interesting. We're talking about legal situations here because we're still and already hearing more and more stories of uh, the lawyer submitting the evidence or the sorry. I have lawyers in my family, but I am not one. Whatever the proper word is, the submission that the lawyer does. Um, it looks right, but was not like the author was wrong, or there's something
Mm,
wrong with it. And you need to be the kind of person in your profession that's going to fine tooth comb that
right.
before it goes in. And I'm not sure that's lawyers.
It could be somebody who has paralegal experience and a really in-depth knowledge of just how to use LLMs to cross-check. They're using other AI to cross-check the first
Right.
AI to check to see if, I mean, if you use right now manually, you could use 4 other LLMs against an answer and reasonably decide whether you think the first one's hallucination made it through all other 5 checks, let's say. And that could be automated, right? That could be processed and all that. So really what we're really saying, I think, Beth, is couldn't you even get to a point where a paralegal is only seeing it after that part? So they're not even being presented with a single answer of like, this is what it is. And hey, by the way, there might be some hallucinations or incorrect things. They may be 2 more steps down the road where AI has continued to evaluate the results through evaluation processes. And now that paralegal is looking at something that, I don't know, has a high probability above 90% of being actually correct, factual, and helpful. And they're doing just that last little bit. I agree with you, Beth. I think like, are we saying we need full on experts for that? Not maybe as much as we need somebody who has a really strong understanding of the basics plus how to work with AI.
Yeah. And I'm saying that I think that is a full on expertise. And it's certainly, even though like we're in the bubble, uh, uh, you couldn't pay me to do that, but all of us are capable of it, right? Like bubble people are capable of that in a context. But you just said 90%, right? Like
Mm,
uh the ability to edit something that is 90% correct and has Easter eggs hidden in the thing. They're not Easter eggs, but they're
sure.
hallucinations, right? Easter eggs hidden in the things that are so well disguised
Mm,
that they won't stand out to you. So you have to look at each piece. Like that's a pretty intense thing. And I think that that's still even people that I'm talking to um even lawyers that I'm talking to are like, but do we really need to check? Yes. Yes, you 100% really need to check. This is not your graduated past the bar intern. This is your 6th grader come to work with dad day and you gave them something to figure out, right? Like you absolutely need to check because AI is based on probability and not factuality.
Well, I'm going to say that ultimately that checking role inside the company can be done by other agents in the stack of agents that are a part of
mm,
the AI. So I'm not so much worried about that particular thing or the need for us to train leagues of humans to fulfill the role of supervising and validating the output of AI. I think ultimately that problem goes away. There is another issue, though, which is trust among the customers of these professional services firms. You've pointed out the problems with regulation, like whether it's the Crown Court system, they're not going to accept something because it hasn't fully passed their requirements in some way in the regulation of that particular industry. And there's plenty of other industries that have similar kinds of regulations that are going to be an obstacle to the full implementation of a full stack AI system. But one of the other problems is all you have to do is have a couple of errors from a full stack AI company that have serious consequences.
mm.
And suddenly you're the brand value of your full stack AI company has been collapsed. And people are going to be very, very hesitant to go to that brand as a service offering because it has this risk associated with it. Now that risk exists with full on human legal firms or full on human healthcare facilities and so on. You don't ever eliminate entirely the risk of human errors or AI errors. But building trust with customers is a difficult and longer term process. It doesn't just happen. Y Combinator puts out the call for full stack AI companies, and next year, here's a bunch of companies that are running fully on AI and are taking market share from the existing players. I think it's going to take a bit longer than that, but Y Combinator is the front end of the pipeline, right? They're asking for ideas, and many of their ideas will start out with the first step, which is, okay, let's provide this vertical tool of a function within this larger AI full stack concept. But eventually we're going to build out all the components, and we will enter the marketplace and compete with existing service providers in that space. So it's going to take a few years for those to emerge. I couldn't find any specific examples of a full stack AI company today, right?
Garfield's the one
one.
I definitely saw as the like that seemed to be the shining light, because I think of getting the regulatory approval and stuff. And again, I think there's a, I don't know, Carl, there's a, is it to full stack AI if there's a human involved? I still think, yes, it is. I mean, I still think that as far as what Y Combinator is probably talking about, I believe that like this Garfield AI or whatever would fall into that category. But you were just saying, Andy, like, it would take a few years. But I go back to what you were saying, Carl, which is that, well, if you can reasonably see where things are going in the next 6 to a year, you might decide to start building today, knowing that the right tools are going to come online. I mean, we could point to many different AI areas, but video processing, right? Like if you were creating a solution that relied on reliable scraping of video and video processing and image, recognition within a frame of a video, if that's what it was. You may say today, like, oh, I don't know if that piece of the puzzle exists, but that wouldn't necessarily stop you from starting to build the rest of the business around that idea. And you're basically waiting for the technology to catch up, because I mean, I think there's a lot of AI technology that we can reasonably assume is 6 months to 12 months out, just based on past trends. So I don't know if that's a calculated risk or worth taking, but I think you could certainly have a shot at that.
I think the one thing I keep saying to, especially to a lot of our clients are, and this becomes more true, especially with this, and I'm actually showing this in our prospect discoveries to get a little bit of like the quote unquote fear into it, because it's true. It's like, yes, we can, everything that we're doing now, discovery processes, running pilots, training up staff, that's fine. However, to me, and I don't know what you all think, it's a little still too slow, because it still takes like a couple months to get the pilots going, and then them to be like, oh, we have to integrate into the process. You're going to be competing with companies that you don't need a pilot. Their whole operation is built solely around AI. It could be one person, two person, so they're going to catch up much faster, and the people around there are just leveraging it, versus your company that has a lot of layers still. And then there's change management, there's integration with systems, which is a very difficult one, legacy systems, getting people trained on how to use it. There's so many barriers and obstacles for your company to adopt it fully, not just pockets of people using it, or not just people using ChatGPT, but like, how do you actually leverage it for the company benefit? Now you're competing with something that's like has full automation and entirely built around that. I was like, I believe from a pure operation standpoint, not customer service and not people interactions with people, it's like they're going to take you to lunch like they're gonna run circles around you because they're gonna be so much more efficient, so much more productive, and they're building for agents while we're building for, hey, do you know this custom GPTs? They're pretty good. Like,
Right.
right?
It's
like that
fundamentally different the way they're building the business.
100%.
They're building it on the idea that I will be able to scale to 10, then 10,000, then 1 million agents if I want to, that can all continue to work night and day, 24/7, without sleep, without rest, and continue to process these things. One of the areas that came up, because I asked Perplexity, I'm like, all right, cool. Come give me 1 to 3 person companies that you give me 5 projects I could propose to Y Combinator right now. One of the first ones that came up with, and I think this speaks to kind of what some of you guys are saying, is like, it's finding that market gap. And what I saw as a common framework, and again, just from what Perplexity was giving me back, seemed to be in areas that were like micro or smaller niche areas of a much larger solution that already exists out there. So in this particular one, it came up and it said AI powered micro law firm for gig workers. Now, it didn't give me a citation on this statistic. It gave me one lower, but it says problem 78% of gig workers lack access to affordable legal services for contract disputes, wage claims, and platform deactivations for freelancers. So full stack solution, deploy an AI paralegal. So in that law idea, trained on 50,000 plus gig economy contracts and labor laws. Automatically file small claims, example, unpaid wages, via integrated court APIs, charge $9.99 a month for unlimited demand letters and 25% of the recovered assets. That was like just one idea. And I think that's a novel idea, right? That's an idea of sort of looking at this full stack, coming direct, instead of, to the point of this conversation, instead of me just coming up and building a SaaS solution, right, Carl, and saying like, here you go, company that already exists. To your point, the whole idea is this circumnavigates that and goes, never mind the dinosaur. I'm going to go right around it at full speed, and I'm just going to produce the result. And mine is going to be built for the future of AI, just like you're saying. So, and there's 4 other ideas here that it came out with. They're all novel. This one happened to be about law, but there was others in there about logistics and garbage or garage-based auto repair, AI only influencer management agency, and so on and so forth. Food inspector was in there as well.
So for our audience and anyone who's listening to this is something that we're really considering, is if you can find one subject matter expert, this person kind of has to have a little bit of, they love kind of innovating, kind of wanting to explore new things, or someone who's just retired from the field. I think that's 2 things. If you can partner with that person, explain exactly what's going on, I think you have an opportunity to build this full stack. Now, it may take you a little longer time, especially in those quote unquote dinosaur industries, to explain it. But that's what we're looking to. It's like, hey, this accountant or this real estate agent or this logistics expert person or this lawyer or this or whatever, or this medical person or whatever it is, I think like you have that opportunity because that person could be the gateway to all the regulations, but you are literally building all the AI around that person. So that person is quote unquote the only human you need. Like we were asked, I think in December by this franchisee owner, hey, could you guys build a pure AI system that can take over marketing for our franchise? Like, I was like, what do you mean? It's like, oh, like, I mean, not hiring a marketer, just have one executing. And I'm like, I don't think the tech is there today, but that doesn't say 3-4 months from now, here we are. And I was like, that's actually getting closer to reality here, right? If I say another 3 months, where are we going with this? So I'm going to go back to that franchising. I'm like, we actually have something here. The tools aren't all baked out, but I think now we can start moving in this process. So when we get all these pieces in place, 3 months from now, where does that look? Now you can start integrating. We have to change the business model from static to super flexible, which it's very interesting to see how people adapt to that, because the traditional way of building a business, you still have fundamentals, but you have to be way more adaptable to be able to switch completely on the fly. But I think you're going to get a lot of entrepreneurs who are if you can find them willing to do that, you've got a pretty darn good business opportunity, like within the next 3 to 6
Months or years?
months.
So
You
one
know,
of the things that I think is interesting in terms of the legal environment, and I think there are other industries in which that would be a factor as well, is that you have two levels of clients, right? So you have the client of the person who's going to use the legal service, and then that legal service goes to a legal service. Now, if it's like submitting the right paperwork, that's just a single client. Like you go, that's an automated thing anyway. But if you're submitting it to a judge, now you need to deal with, and is the judge human? Because right now the judge is human and not AI. So then you have to deal with what biases the judge will have about something that was created with AI, right? So we kind of addressed this when we were talking about how long it will take before an AI generated movie will win an Oscar or an award, and what we came to in that conversation was it can do something really good, but it may not be awarded the award at that time because it's humans who work in that industry who vote for that, right? So
Yeah.
I think you can put the business together. The efficacy of the business is not necessarily how well the business works, I think, in this sea change kind of place where we're in.
I want to go back to Carl's point about how fast the technology is changing in months and enabling this idea of full stack AI. So if you launch a full stack AI company in late 2025, you'll be using component elements in your AI system that have to be rapidly and continuously improved to meet the state of the art, because somebody else in first quarter 2026 is going to launch their version of your AI, but using the latest and greatest tools. And it'll take you time to switch. There's switching costs every time. Unless, of course, you're using all AI coding and it can swap everything out, and it's architected it in a way that you'll always have the state of the art behind your AI system. So at least in this dynamic, almost all software environment, as long as you have built a human architect plus AI architects have built it in such a way that it can always swap out every component in order to meet the best and greatest capabilities that are emerging so rapidly, then you're going to be seconded. You're going to be pushed back into the line very quickly by newly emerged all AI full stack startups.
Yeah. So maybe the goal there is that, like, maybe the strategy for some company is to not be first, to let somebody trudge through, right? Build the first AI full stack, really with the intent of sitting back and waiting and figuring out how they're going to like wait for the next tech thing so they can pivot around them really quick and run by that the first person in, and they run right around them because they have efficiencies. I see you, Jimmy, go ahead.
No, I you bring up a really interesting aspect, and this is kind of when Carl first proposed this, because we did a previous episode about the vertical SaaS and these call outs that Y Combinator is doing, is it very much is saying quiet part out loud in terms of Y Combinator as well. They are there to try all this out. They give you a few $1,000s and you run with it. They're not on the hook. You know, that it's not their company that's that's responsible, or if it crashes and burns, but they certainly get a percentage if it blows up and is awesome, right? So it's a great deal for them. So that would also explain why every 3 months they come up with what some people might consider conflicting ideas, right? Build the vertical SaaS, and then in 3 months it's like, no, just build the full stack AI version of that industry. Right? Because it's all about iteration for them. So they have the money to just go, here's a few bucks, go for it, run with it. if it hits, then cool, we get more than our enough of our return, and then we can try it out again. And that's also a great way for anyone who's feeding into Y Combinator or connected to Y Combinator to have that first foot in the door when it comes to investing or the next series for these companies that have hit the mark. So I mean, I think overall it's a good way to support people who have these ideas and they want to, push forward, but they're definitely getting the lion's share, the better part of the deal going on. But I think what this really highlights is that like the speed that you were talking about, it's not just the development, it's the idea iteration. And we're going to see more and more of that. Maybe the full stack AI industry company, they have it in 3 months. It's up and running. They don't see any traction. All right, what's another version of that? Okay, maybe the market isn't ready for that level, or the industry, or the regulation, or like for legal, maybe the courts are nowhere near ready to say, whoa, what, absolutely not. This is not an industry that you're going to be able to do this full stack right now. So it's all about the probing and the iteration and turning it over. So there might be a way to look at this from the builder side of things, or the company, you want to create your startup, is to look at it in this much quicker cycle. Because normally if you're a startup founder, right, you're gonna take your idea, your mission, your passion, you're gonna build it up, then you're gonna get to a point where usually it's VC time, your percentage gets lowered, all of that equity is distributed amongst your investors, and then at a certain point you spin out and it gets sold, or you exit, or something along those lines, and then you go on to your next project. Now that's usually a 2 or 3 year timeline just to get to that point, right? And then 5 years to considered successful, those kinds of things. But Y Combinator might be showing us that these whether it's just full stack AI or just AI, with AI now, businesses or startups will run on a much faster cycle.
Don't you think though that this can, like, we're talking about Y Combinator, but I'd be curious what you guys think on this. Couldn't you bring this all the way down? I mean, what is stopping somebody? I'll put it this way. What is stopping anybody today, anybody listening to this show, of essentially taking like a small business association model to this, an SBA model? In my town, I'm just north of Tampa. So I have a big old metro city, 35, 45 minutes away from me, right? But I'm in a fairly developed urban, like suburban type area where I am. Lots of people. Okay. I have people like my dad, or maybe possibly younger. My dad is mid 70s, still extremely intelligent, smart from all the years he did in aviation. There's lots of my dads. There's lots of men and women who are in retirement age who now have excess time, to Carl's point. Then you have people who, in every major town, I would believe now. I don't think this is so unique that people aren't intelligent enough and don't have the means to do like these, to understand AI and what full stack would be. And then honestly, I think there's even a play here for hyper local communities to basically reenact what is a Y Combinator type scenario, where you have people who have investment money, but it might be $100, not $1 million, right? It's not like, we're not talking about VCs. We're talking about small micro investments that are homegrown and solve homegrown problems. So they're in the community of whatever that might be. I was playing around with Perplexity and talking about something like, I simply took the idea of recycling. I, as a good steward of the earth, take my recycling and I put it out at the curb. And in the back of my mind, if I really think about it, I go, I wonder how much of that's going to go in the landfill. But God knows, every week on Wednesday, tomorrow morning, I'm going to put out that recycling again, hoping for the best. And so you might take a situation like that and go, how could I relook at this and make this a premium service for picking up some of the recycling to make people feel better and have visibility into the recycling process so that they know actually where their good deed is going. And they might want to actually pay a subscription for that. And honestly, could I get teenagers to run that on e-bikes going around my neighborhood, picking up those smaller one-off recycling bins? I make the recycling bins look super cool on the edge of the curb. And you know what that recycling bin says? Hey, this is my social proof that I'm a good person of the earth. And I pay a little more. I pay for somebody to come get my recycling to do it. So like, I think there's these types of ideas. And if somebody was so inclined, they could do these small SBA type situations that are like micro Y Combinators just in their community or in DC or wherever, right? And you could essentially recreate every bit of what we talked about, which makes me insanely excited about the potential, because there's literally no guardrails or limits of what somebody could do to find that market gap, come in with a strong, very fast MVP with retired knowledge, maybe in that industry that is super intelligent, but they have time now to invest in their time into it and put all the other pieces together. Man, that could be super fun.
So to answer your question, Brian, there's nothing stopping it.
Right.
This is one of those things that allows you to move along the scale, right? Whether it be the microcosm all the way to the macro. We're talking about Y Combinator, but there are groups and institutions that are regional, that are focused on getting those small startups, or they have a less, not as big as a loan or big as his investment. You know, we're talking numbers of dollars here. But it makes them far more effective now because we exist in this idea of a full stack AI business can exist, right? With the tech and the ability to support it. I think in most industries, even today, you're going to see a much more efficient use of funds, right? I forget where I heard about, someone had posed the question is like, oh, what's going to happen when the technology is so good that someone with 50K can just go and build a solid business, and it can grow and scale from there. And, you know, you no longer need VC money to go have a real shot at it, quote unquote.
Yeah.
So I think that local or regional focus is a real easy, a real low barrier of entry and a real easy way of getting it going. It's recognizing and being able to start up those, either changes the mindsets or gets people to go, hey, this is kind of where we should be focusing. So towns, counties, they should really be looking at that level to get these kinds of iterative startups going, because it will mean far more to the people involved and will have a greater impact faster. So yeah, I'm totally in line with you on that.
So Gareth brings up a good point in the chat. What is Y Combinator? So if you don't know what Y Combinator is, it's a startup accelerator based in Silicon Valley, and it provides early stage companies with seed funding, mentorship, networking with investors, founders, experts, and in exchange to the proposals that they've accepted, the companies that they've accepted, Y Combinator typically takes about a 7% equity in the startup. It has a great reputation. So it is known for spotting trends early, cloud technology, fintech, AI, biotech, like it has a track record. So being someone who is accepted by Y Combinator is relevant in this kind of world.
Yeah, it's a badge, right?
Sam Altman was the CEO of Y Combinator for a period of time.
Yes, until he wasn't. I think not by choice, but the I don't know what that phrase was called, whether it was like a mutual separation. I don't want to say exactly because I don't have the information in front of me. But I want to acknowledge in this context Y Combinator is also moving the Overton window even if we're not ready for it, because there's a vested interest in that too, right? So if they are if they're interested in more companies with AI, even if we're not ready for a full stack AI like process or company taking over an industry kind of thing, it's in their interest to start talking about that as a thing that is a reality, if not now, in the future. So they're supporting it, but they're also helping seed the environment in which it could be a reality.
Yeah. And I do want to point out that
I've surfaced a couple of examples of
great.
full stack things. I did a deep research while we've been talking here,
I love that.
and it came up first with a healthcare stealth startup. So why it didn't surface immediately required some piecing together, apparently. So Hero, HYRO, uses diagnostic AI and telemedicine infrastructure to offer end-to-end care to patients. Patients interact with AI triage agents that can schedule tests, interpret imaging once it's received via its own computer vision, and prescribe treatments, all under physician oversight. So there's a physician behind the scenes who probably has to do the final approval of a certain prescription, for example. But early trials show a 40% reduction in diagnostic errors compared to traditional workflows. Now that's probably being taken from the behind the scenes promotional information from that thing. We don't have any access to that data. The other one that I think is interesting is automated AI claims processing and underwriting. CoverWrite, which launched in 2024, has AI agents that analyze claims photos, assess damage via computer vision, and approve payouts in 90 seconds. By 2025, the startup had processed over 500,000 claims with a 98% customer satisfaction rate, while challenging incumbent adjusters with 80% lower operational costs. Pretty good, right? Now, one final one. Real estate. In California, launched in late 2023, Domus AI bypasses traditional brokers, real estate brokers, by matching buyers and properties using AI-trained preference models. And it handles virtual tours, mortgage approvals, and contract signings. In 2024, Domus AI closed $200 million in sales in California, reducing average transaction times from 90 days to 14. Now, 200 million in real estate transactions is a nit, right? So it's not moving the needle in real estate at this point. You can imagine, in California, a 2-bedroom 1970s era thing is $1 million in some markets. So having done a few transactions in and around that kind of high level of real estate prices, it would you'd want to see billions of transactions to prove out that model.
Same one, by the way. The one I was going to bring up is also in real estate. Sounds very similar. eSelf AI, which is an Israeli startup, but they actually had success in Portugal, where it was a real estate brokerage in Portugal, reporting 100 million in sales generated from leads provided by the AI agent. And this was just a quote from the CEO. We are not only a face that is moving and speaking while the agent responds to the user, but we also have sharing video and image capabilities. And then a little bit farther down, they said, this is from the Portugal-based real estate brokerage firm. We have more than 5,000 properties currently in our portfolio. It's impossible for a physical person to know all the information regarding the 5,000 properties, but it's not impossible for AI agent to do so. So if you're a customer, you're going to get probably and most likely a much better service right away than you will have with a physical commercial consultant, because she knows, the AI agent knows everything about the properties. So this isn't like a unique idea. Obviously, the idea that you would build some sort of very, very strong RAG system with an LLM upfront chatbot is not novel. It's not new. We've seen several things like this, but I think it goes to point out, now this is a firm doing this, but what really is to stop some net new company, some Y Combinator type company coming in and going, hey, we think we can handle this from soup to nuts, and we can just manage the entire thing from the time that the prospective buyer is thinking about buying a house in the Tampa Bay area, straight through closing documents and ensuring that all regulations, all that stuff is done. And from the consumer side, truthfully, let's be honest, if the consumer gets lower real estate brokerage costs. I mean, typically I haven't bought a house in 2 years, but it was still around 6%. Sometimes that's split 3 and 3 with the buying agent and the seller agent. It depends. But what does Joe Blow really want when they're going to be selling their house? That it's going to cost them less money to sell their house. And if an agent is able to now connect buyers and sellers together in a much more efficient process, you would also have to imagine some companies going to come in with extremely low rates, like 1%, and be so competitive. And on a, average house in the United States at 400,000, whatever the average house price is at this point, some absurd number, 1% versus 4% or 6% is a major savings for that seller. And I think that's where you're going to see some company come in and just blow the doors off of this. And maybe it does start with just 200 million, but I mean, how long before some house seller goes, I'm going to go with the agent company. That's a whole lot cheaper and gets me moved through the process with a lot less pain for me.
So at some point, doesn't this just become our dating service? The idea that we've talked about. And I suspect this will fly in the face of regulation. So I think regulation will be why it doesn't. But your buyer's profile is hyper personalized to them, and their AI representative knows what they want. Your seller's profile is hyper personalized to them.
Mm-hmm.
They know what they want. So now you can come together the amounts agreed upon, right? All the ways that buyers and sellers can negotiate a successful sale are on the table and agreed upon in that kind of discussion before the humans ever get involved. Yep. And if we're doing that, let's also have a contractor, right, who's in this too. So your house is almost exactly what I want, but it's missing this. Okay, we now bring the contractor in who says, I can do it for X amount. Now it's exactly what I want. We can move forward with this. That's like a massive industry change.
So what do you think of the holdups to something like that? Because that seems like, I mean, I worked in mortgages back in the day. I worked for Wells Fargo Financial and I sold mortgages, early 2000s. I agree with you that there's a lot of legality to that or whatever, but kind of like the initial thing with the Garfield or whatever, where there was still a human involved in it. What we're really saying though is there's a lot less humans involved. And if there's a lot less overhead in human cost, capital, insurance costs, and all these things for this parent company to do this, whatever the full stack company is, even if it was 5 humans, even if it was 10 people working on this, your overhead has got to be significantly less. And if they're able to still basically be the last line of defense that says, sure, 99% of this was AI, but I'm still vouching for this with my license and saying that this is 100% correct. And I'm taking on the responsibility through my real estate brokerage license, just like you would in medical or law or anything else, and saying, at the end of the day, the buck stops with me. I'm vouching for this. This is me. I think there's a huge potential for this, Beth.
I do too. I am not saying that I think the human in the loop is the regulation issue. I think the hyper personalization analysis of these things from each of those special, that's the secret sauce, right? You give us everything that you want. We can do a super analysis. We can communicate really quickly and come up with a solution very quickly. I think that has the potential to change industry so rapidly that government will get involved. That's where I see the regulation.
I see your point.
And I don't know how that's going to work, but that for me is the logical end result from what we're talking about in terms of full stack, right? Because who wouldn't want that? It saves you money. It makes you more money. You get a job and everybody's happy.
Yeah. Yeah, somebody's going to want a piece of that pie. Somebody's going to want to get their hands into something like that and get their dollar or whatever.
Well, you have like you could conceivably like change how people buy houses in like a 3-month period,
Oh yeah,
right?
100%.
And that's like, whoa, what just happened? So yeah.
And also just to bring it back to the hyper local level, that's not to say it has to be some national program. It could just be somebody who has really good understanding of the local market. I mean, Tampa and San Francisco are not the same market, and so they have to be treated. Miami, I would say, is another big one like that. It has to be treated as its own thing, just like a real estate agent who is very, very good at Miami, but may not be as great or sell as much in some other market that they don't understand, right? So I think there's, again, going back to, sure, there's these big global, like you could come in and disrupt an entire industry, but what if you just disrupted your local Berkshire Hathaway office? You were a disruptor to them. I mean, couldn't you make a solid, use case for doing something like that? So I think it's really, really interesting. Okay, I know we're kind of close on time, but anybody, by the way, Carl had a drop. He had a meeting that he had to run to. So if you haven't heard Carl's voice and you're listening to us, he had a drop at about 35 after, but this is a phenomenal topic. And I know he wanted to be able to hang around. He just wasn't able to. But thoughts as we sort of wrap this up before we end for the day here.
I'd say my final thoughts is we are in a position to take advantage of this rapidly developing technology. I think everyone here or in our bubble understands this, but if anybody's catching the show later, or they're just new to AI or learning about AI, there is no better time to get up and running. And because of this technology, it has the potential to be very empowering in the fact that you can do these hyper local or micro instances. And that's a very low bar of entry. And I'm always a big fan of that. It's like, now you can try it. Now you can have, someone can have a dozen startups every other year and, spin it up and see what happens.
Yeah. Low barrier. Any last thoughts? By the way, I think what we're really saying here is that we're going to start a DOS think tank, and then we're just going to interview people with their great ideas and take a small 7% of future profits by just allowing them to be in the room with us and say, that's a really good idea. We don't think we can get to that in 6 months because the tech's not here yet, but we'll just put you right here. We'll just stay in line. Don't go far. We'll be back. We're going to go build this really quick because they're ready. That's a fantastic idea. And we'll just be the think tank, and we'll take a small percentage for, our work.
If we have a platform that can get your mission out there, your idea out there, I think that's worth it.
Wait, are we just creating DOS Combinator right now? That's
listen. I didn't say it, and I'm not using that term.
What's our term now? $billion idea? DOS Combinator?
I think, listen, I'm not stepping on anybody's toes, maybe see Andy is the CEO. I'm just saying there's some options here, we lean on what we have. Andy, any last thoughts before we wrap up?
No, I think that was a fascinating conversation.
It was a really fun one. I really loved where the potential of this is. It really opened up my eyes to that there's not nearly as many roadblocks as one might think to just being the next person that does this. There's quite literally nothing in front of you, or, other than getting some knowledge along the way. So listen, tomorrow, as always on Wednesday, Jumi will be hosting us through all the AI news. And of course, AI in science. Say it. AI in science.
AI and science.
I thought maybe you would jump in and do it. I was like, maybe he'll do it. He doesn't know what I'm talking about.
Missed the cue, my bad.
It's okay. That's what we have coming up tomorrow. Come back and hang out with us for all the amazing AI news. And there's always a lot of it, especially this time of year. We are rocking and rolling with the AI news every single week. So that's what we have coming up, guys. And obviously great AI conversations the rest of the week as well. Come back and hang out with us. Really appreciate you today. Thanks to Carl, who's obviously not here anymore for today's show, but thanks to Carl for bringing this as a topic, because it really was a fun one. Okay, that's it. Bye, everybody.
Aloha.